Welcome back to the New Books and Indian Religions podcast, a podcast channel here on the New Books Network. I'm your host, Dr. Raj Balkaran. More importantly, I have the pleasure of welcoming back to the podcast Dr. Pankaj Jain, who is editor of a fascinating new Routledge publication called Visual Anthropology of Indian Films, Religious Communities and Cultural Traditions in Bollywood and Beyond. Welcome back to the podcast, Pankaj.
Thank you, Raj. Doing it relatively unstoppably. Very good.
How did this project come about? What's the backstory?
Yes, very humble beginning. Even though my academic training is not exactly in film studies, but I was born in a very small town in Rajasthan called Pali, which is on nobody's map. And all I could do growing up in that small town in Rajasthan was watching films and listening to its music and listening to a lot of songs, Hindi songs. So it became my life, it remains my lifelong passion. Hindi film remains my lifelong passion, which is now called as Bollywood. So after my PhD, as I started my academic career, I started writing. I ventured into writing about films, which I really I'd never done it. And lo and behold, within a decade, I have now more than a dozen articles ready from various journal articles. So I thought, why not leverage? Why not, take advantage of my own work? So this humble volume is a collection of a dozen of my own articles, some co-authored with various other authors, but the idea behind every article is mine, and writing is of course mine, but also I have some couple of three or four co-authored pieces as well in this volume, which are all based on my inputs and my ideas and my passion for so-called Bollywood and Hindi films. Yes.
What's the
So that's
overall
how.
gist? What's the overall gist or argument? What's the overall
Overall, yeah. So
focus?
it has now. It's based on, like I said, 12 articles. So I divided these collection of articles into three parts. First five chapters now of this book are based on or called as portrayal of religious communities. So in the first article, I talk about Christians. Never ever this was written before in any academic journal, but this is an innovative article or chapter now, which is from Kill Arnie to Anthony, the portrayal of Christians in Indian films. Second article in this section, Such a Long Journey, portrayal of the Parsi community in films, Zoroastrians. Now iconic group, the Tata group is one of the Parsi groups in India. So, but Parsis were part of Indian film. They were never written about in an academic article. Third article is From Padosi to My Name is Khan, the portrayal of Hindu-Muslim relations in South Asian films. So reason I call it South Asian because I also talk about Pakistani and Bangladeshi film, one Bangladeshi film and a couple of Pakistani films as well. Then I go on to Film as a Majoritarian Framework of Hindu Nationalism, the case of Purab or Paschim with my co-author Ajay Rana, and I wrote this one, published last year. Then finally, fifth article in this section is Encountering Asceticism, a Hindu nun in Jogan vis-a-vis a Buddhist monk in Trishagni. So this also written with my co-author Shikha Sharma. That completes part one. In part two, I talk about the part two section is called as Portrayal of Gender Issues, which has two articles, two chapters. First is Anuradha and Anupama, Gender Issues Through Nussbaum's Capabilities Approach, co-authored with Nandini Bhasin. And second one is Objectification of Women in V. Shantaram's films, Janak Janak Payal Baje and Geet Gaya Patrone, which I've written also with Nandini Bhasin. Then the last section is Portrayal of Nature, Environment and Climate Issues, which is my PhD focus area, which is my academic. I've been trained in these topics, so this became relatively easier for me to write. But so this section has also five chapters. First is once again first ever such academic article you'll see, portrayal of climate issues in Indian films, Hindi film mostly. So Children of the Soil, that is Dharti Ke Lal, to Dark Wind, Kadvi Hawa. nature, environment, and climate in Indian films, which I've also co-authored with Shikha Sharma. Next is eco-critical analysis of classics by three Indian film maestros, an extended film review in which I review classics by the three Bengali maestros, Ritvik Ghatak, Mrinal Sen, and Satyajit Ray. All right, next, Sara Jahan Hamara, Indian films and their portrayal of foreign destinations. I just love writing these articles on films and various topics. The next one, my favorite film, Do Bigha Zameen by Bimal Roy, a Bengali maestro, but who made more Hindi films, excellent classic Hindi films, which also I co-authored with Jyoti Tyagi. So Do Bigha Zameen, a realistic masterpiece of Indian cinema. And then finally, the last chapter in the volume is Virtue, Ethics of Boot Polish and Dosti, Hindi films, two classics of 50s and 60s, as compared with Slumdog Millionaire, the Hollywood blockbuster film, which I criticize in this particular chapter. So these are the 12 chapters which I passionately wrote and enjoyed watching these films. I always enjoy and write and love to write about these. This is my humble tribute to great legendary filmmakers of Indian cinema. But I wait for your question. Either I'll go on and on. But yeah, go ahead with your question. Yes.
So your joy of this writing, is it because of your joy of films or is it more?
Of course, as I told you, like, because all I could do was watch films. I was growing up in that very small town in Rajasthan. And and eventually, as I landed up in the US in late, lo and behold, the films that were not available in India, I found them in University of Iowa library. So, films by Satyajit Ray, films by Ritvik Ghatak, films by Mrinal Sen, Aparna Sen, Tarun Majumdar, and Tapan Sinha, all these legendary filmmakers, which I had not even heard their names, because these classics are not available now on YouTube. Thanks to YouTube, everything is available for free everywhere, worldwide. But growing up in India in 80s, 70s, that was a luxury, not even a luxury. It was not available, period. So when I discovered this treasure hunt, I was on my treasure hunt as I was doing my PhD in Iowa. I gobbled up every single film that I could find in my University of Iowa library. I'm very grateful for that great collection there. So I just dived into all these classics, Bengali, even though I don't speak or understand Bengali fully, but all these films are now available with captions. So as I love the acting, the direction, the screenplay, the music, a lot of music based on classical rags, and a lot of these films are extremely relevant even in today's time. Like the section title that I shared with you, portrayal of religious communities, portrayal of climate change, portrayal of gender issues. These are extremely relevant topics, but our filmmakers were dealing with these topics much ahead of their time, long before climate change became a thing to talk about. In 50s, our filmmakers were dealing with these issues, 1950s, in black and white era. So they were much ahead of their times. All these great filmmakers, V. Shantaram and Satyajit Ray and Ritvik Ghatak, they were talking about migration issues. They were talking about climate. They were taking these issues in their films. So all this passion of mine regarding films became very academically relevant also. So that's why they were published, all these articles were published in Journal of Visual Anthropology by Routledge, and Worldviews, a journal by Brill. So they're relevant, they are interesting, these topics are, and the films are masterpieces. Yes.
What's the intervention? What intervention does this book make?
Almost all these topics are, like I said, innovative topics. Nobody ever wrote about this. So climate change being portrayed in films, which nobody talked about. So recently, just last month, actually, from Forbes, there's this popular magazine called Forbes, Forbes. Forbes has an Indian edition now. So one of the authors for Forbes called me to write a summary of my academic article for Forbes. So because it was so new for even for a popular magazine also. So so all these topics, so Hindu-Muslim topics, for example, let's take that. Right, so Hindu-Muslim topics or tension or even violence is usually talked about in the way that, as if filmmakers have always promoted tension in their films. But I make the argument that Hindi filmmakers, have always promoted secularism and Gandhian values and Nehruvian values, and they always show Muslims as always helping or colluding with Hindu protagonists, so because they're interested in their box office also. So they want their films to become popular. So they want Muslims to come and watch their films. They want Hindus to come and watch their films. So they can't show one community in negative light at all. So I challenge that argument, which used to be made in academic circles, that filmmakers are always anti-Muslim. So I wrote this encyclopedic article covering dozens and dozens and dozens of Hindi films, and I show them that how filmmakers are actually promoting this intercommunal harmony in their films. Amar Akbar Anthony. Amar is Hindu, Akbar is Muslim, Anthony is Christian. And how these three are three brothers. And how it remains an iconic film promoting intercommunal harmony. So like that. I just gave one example. So many articles have challenged, commonly established notions that, this way or that way. So this is my little intervention, like, to answer your question.
Given your research uncovering dozens of examples of films wherein Hindus and Muslims live peacefully, whereby do we have this caricature that you are arguing against? Why is the general caricature in scholarship in this area one of tension?
Good question. It's a great question. Yeah, that's a really nice question. What happens still today is that most of the scholars outside India remained unaware of Indian films because of lack of captions. There was no subtitles. But I grew up watching every single film in 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't need any captions. And I knew about so many of these unknown films in the West. So as I started writing, I could just gather from my memory, and I kept adding to my list. Right? So the notion, the caricature of Indian films is based on very limited viewing of Indian films by Western scholars or scholars in the West. It doesn't matter what ethnicity they are. But people have very limited, until recently, they had very limited window to Indian films. Only like films that were made after Shah Rukh Khan era was available to people watching Indian films with captions and subtitles. So that era also probably coincided, was parallel to what was happening in Kargil War. So during the Kargil War, because of the tension between India and Pakistan was shown in negative light in some films. So that got blown out of proportion, and the entire film industry was, being shown in this very critical light. So I challenge that, and I show that, film like you may not even heard of, nobody has heard of it in the West. There's a film called Shejari. Shejari means neighbor in Marathi. Shejari was made in Hindi also, Padosi. Padosi means neighbor. Same film in two languages was made by V. Shantaram in 1940s, in which he shows in a village, Hindus and Muslims unite together, remain united, and as a dam breaks apart in their village, they come together and save the village. Now talk about this Hindu-Muslim unity in 1940s. How V. Shantaram was so ahead of his time. Probably he was aware of the tension simmering because of the partition. And India, again, once again, India-Pakistan partition, Eastern Pakistan, Western Pakistan. So there was violence happening during that time. So probably V. Shantaram made a film to promote intercommunal harmony. Most likely influenced by Mahatma Gandhi and other secular kind of ideas. So Shejari, I start with Shejari and Padosi in that article that I was talking. So from Shejari, Padosi to My Name is Khan, I do this comprehensive survey of decades and decades of films in which Hindu-Muslim unity was promoted and still being promoted. Yes.
What is your critique of Slumdog Millionaire?
Oh man, Slumdog Millionaire. So I'll talk about from what I argue in my article. I'm sure you've seen Slumdog Millionaire, everybody's seen it. So in my article, what I challenge is, the way I challenge that film is, I compare that film with my two examples of Dosti and Boot Polish. Dosti and Boot Polish, both films show these orphan kids in streets of Mumbai, and instead of pickpocketing or any criminals or even begging, these orphan kids in these films, Dosti and Boot Polish, they earn their livelihood based on hard work of polishing boots, shoe polish on the railway stations of Mumbai. in Dosti, there are two friends. One is blind, one is lame. One can't walk, one cannot see. So the one who cannot see is a good singer. One who cannot walk is a good musician. He plays his mouth organ, right? So based on their musical art skill, they earn their livelihood not by begging, not by crimes, but by again doing hard work of singing and collecting money. And then the one friend makes sure that the other friend goes to school and makes his career. So the message, and boot polish also, one of the siblings ends up in a school, makes his career. So the message is only by hard work, only by education, only by acquiring good skills and arts and education, you can make your livelihood by proper means. Slumdog Millionaire, the entire portrayal is of crimes, gambling, begging. The entire game is based on gambling, and like kind of almost like a game. So it's the virtue ethics that I argue in Dosti and Boot Polish. Virtue ethics is based on hard work, good values, more moral values, not begging, not crimes. That's what I argue. So that's my critique of Slumdog Millionaire. It takes a very shortcut approach and cheap entertainment, and it's like showing the underbelly of Mumbai, but it's not showing how people in Mumbai, kids in Mumbai, orphans in Mumbai, are making their livelihood based on real hard work and real passion for education, real hard work and real moral means and ethical means they're earning their life. That's a critique of Slumdog Millionaire.
Was there anything about this process that surprised you?
Surprise, yeah, one of the surprises was that, how limited the knowledge about Indian films was, at least when I was writing these articles about now almost, I would say, 15 years back. It has been a journey of 15 years when these articles came about. And I think still today, actually, knowledge about Indian films is very limited among people living in the West, because the films that they're watching are mostly the latest films, the new films, right? Even my own journey still continues today. Right now, I'm exploring Bengali films. Bengali films, very limited knowledge about Bengali films exist worldwide outside Bengal. That too, only the great maestros films such as Satyajit Ray and Ritvik Ghatak and Mrinal Sen and Aparna Sen. But films by Tarun Majumdar or Tapan Sinha or Uttam Kumar, Suchitra Sen films, they still remain unknown in the West, or even within India, outside Bengal, very less people have seen these films. So a lot to be done and a lot to be written about. And so that's my biggest surprise, that we need to. They provide some really excellent windows to India changing from 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s to now third decade of 21st century. And I think it provides us really, really good insights into learning about what India has undergone and what all changes we have seen in terms of the buildings how they're made, in terms of how people spoke these languages, Hindi or Bengali, or and how early films were. You will see village life much more closely. You will see a lot of animals in early films. We no longer see animals or birds or even reptiles in contemporary films. And family values were much more prominent in early films of 50s, 60s, 70s even. So all these changes that we need to, I think, they provide good window to all these changes that have taken place in India and across the world.
Do these films give us insight about India, or do they give us insight about an imagined India, or both?
Of course, they're all fictionalized accounts, but when they show the streets of India, they are showing actual streets of Mumbai. You will see Mumbai or Kolkata, you'll see them very less traffic, and it's like a paradise as you watch these films. Mumbai and Kolkata appear like paradise, very less traffic, very less pollution. Now, if you go to real cities, they're full of traffic and a lot of pollution and so on. So, of course, some fictionalized accounts, but you can make your judgments. You can connect the dots and imagine how clean and less noisy and less polluted those cities were that time, at least in 70s or 60s or even earlier. So yes, some fiction, but some real portrayal also you can guess from watching these films. Yes.
who might be interested in this book? What subfields does it implicate?
I think every student of Indian films, every student of Indian culture, every fan or every lover of Indian films should be interested in my book, because again, like these articles, these films have never talked about in most of the academic books on Indian film, which are really exploded. Indian films have appeared on academia worldwide. A lot of books have been written, but once again, most of these books are focusing on contemporary cinema of 21st century. Very less books on or articles on the film that I'm talking about, popular films of Manmohan Desai or V. Shantaram or Shakti Samant, and on and on. So I think this book will be of interest to all of us who are interested in Indian cinema worldwide.
Fascinating. Is this work that you're continuing somehow?
Yes, like I said yesterday, I'm on a spree of watching Bengali films. So every day I watch a Bengali film. I watched Nayak by Satyajit Ray just 3 days back. Then I watched Horon Shur, Lost Note, musical note. I watched just 2 days back. Then yesterday I watched Saptapadi, which means the marriage, the wedding ritual. And today I'm going to watch Chidiya Khana, also by Satyajit Ray, starring Uttam Kumar. All these 4 films, Uttam Kumar stars in all these 4 films. So I'm just eagerly waiting after your interview, and then I'll go back to my learning from Bengali films, because Bengali is not my language, but out of my passion, out of my interest, I just keep exploring more and more, which remains a
So,
passion for me.
what is your process like when you watch these films at
Yes.
present? Are you able to let go and watch and enjoy them as before? Are you watching sort of with taking notes, or is your process one of research?
Yeah, I watch with open mind. I don't take notes. I just want to enjoy films first. This is my passion first, then my academic work. So as I watch them, I take, I guess, mental notes. But if a pattern emerges, let's say if I watch 2 or 3 films and a pattern emerged. For example, yesterday I was watching this Saptapadi film. I'll share with you a little bit. Saptapadi is fascinating film. Your favorite word, fascinating. It's a film that shows first time in Bengali film, probably one of the first films in which the hero, the male protagonist, is a Hindu and the heroine is a Christian, Anglo-Indian. So hero has to convert to Christianity to be able to wed this heroine. So you see this interreligious, interracial tension, probably one of the first films in a Bengali setting. So like that, if a pattern emerges and I find more films on these themes, then that can become my next article. Right?
That is fascinating. Almost as fascinating as my favorite word being fascinating. This
See,
is
I
great.
noticed.
Is there
I
anything
didn't know you
else?
have a podcast.
Oh, there's so many interesting threads in all these podcasts, and I get to
Yes.
read them as a generalist. I'm not preparing for comprehensive exams, and I
Yes.
get to play dumb, as it
Sure.
were.
Sure.
um, it's so many intriguing topics. Was there anything else about the project or the book that you wanted to share before we closed?
That's it. This was my seventh. This is my seventh book, and I'm very excited that it's my first film book, first cinema book, and I humbly offer to the readers worldwide. And I hope your podcast will help readers connect with my book, my articles even better. And we will keep watching these great films and keep exploring the alternative aesthetic. Oh yeah, one more thing. Indian films present an alternative aesthetic to Hollywood aesthetics. Hollywood plots are serial plots. Indian films are rarely serial. They provide masala entertainment, which is based on Natya Shastra by Bharat Muni, a Sanskrit text that was written 2000 years back. But that Natya Shastra aesthetics we find in almost all Hindi films, Bengali films, South Indian films, and this was written very nicely, amazingly well by my professor Philip Latgender, whom I call Philip G, in his article that was published in International Journal of Hindu Studies article in that journal, in which he connects Natya Shastra with Sanskrit text Natya Shastra with theaters of India and then cinema of India. So Indian cinema is not just some entertainment, but it provides theory of aesthetics based on Natya Shastra, and we have to appreciate that Natya Shastra aesthetics. We have to appreciate Indian cinema. So with that, I think we can close this podcast. Our humble tribute to my professor and to the great Bharat Muni. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for appearing today. For those listening, we've been speaking again with Dr. Pankaj Jain on visual anthropology of Indian films, a brand new Routledge publication. Until next time, keep well, keep listening, and keep watching movies and wondering what they're about.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you for
care.
writing that.